Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahabhiryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We were looking at the human pursuits and trying to understand our unending pursuits of security, pleasure, which we share with animals also. But being a human, we also have a matrix of values or ethics, which also plays a role when we are pursuing our security and pleasure. So this pursuit of ethics, when a certain religious ethics also is added, we also call it dharma. So the word dharma has a very wide meaning in our tradition. Depending on the context, we take a particular meaning. Dharma itself comes from the root dhr. Dhr means to support or hold together. In this meaning it comes. So we look upon dharma as that which supports the world as we encounter, as it is, our entire life and the world, the external world which is there. The entire universe is supported by dharma. If we look at it like that, we understand dharma as the underlying order which is there in everything. See, dharma is the order for us. Why do we say that? Because without order, there is no world as we know it. The order is the one which is supporting everything. All the laws which are there. So let us say there is the gravitational law. So we all know the law of gravitation, that if you drop an object, so within the Earth's gravitational field, of course, it will fall down at the rate of 9.8. All these values are given, correct? So now let us say it keeps on changing. Today it is 9.8, tomorrow it is 9.9, day after it is 10 and all that. Or one day it becomes 5. So if it keeps happening like that, do you think we can have any machines or even the life as we know it can be there if these laws keep changing? There are so many constants. Even the physicists, those who study, they all say that there are many constants, correct? Like Planck's constant is there if you have studied some physics. Now they say even if one decimal value of that changes, we won't have the world like what we know today. So it is like that. That means there is an order which is actually making the world as it is. This order is the one which is supporting the life and the creation as we know. So there is a physical order. I talked about physics. There is also a chemical order, correct? Because if you bring two chemicals under a particular condition, then they will actually behave in a certain way. Certain chemical reaction will take place. These things are constant. Even these things start changing. Today, hydrogen and oxygen will produce water if you bring them together. Tomorrow, they produce hydrogen peroxide in the same situation. Means, in fact, there is even a joke which I remember. So one chemist, it seems he went to a restaurant and said H2O, give me H2O. Then the other physicist, other chemist also was there, two guys. So he said H2O2 for him. Then once he drank that H2O2 means he died, because H2O2 is not like water for human beings. It's actually very dangerous. If you drink hydrogen peroxide, you can even die. But it is also having hydrogen and oxygen only, actually speaking. So even if chemical reactions do not take place properly under a given situation, it keeps on changing. Means if there is no chemical order, then also the world will not be like what we know. It will be total chaos. So there is a physical order, there is a chemical order, there is a biological order. Like this, so many orders are there. Physiological order is there. That's why we can test on a mice and then give that medicine. We can test it on human being also, because physiology is same. Although the mice does not look anything like a human being. Then there is also a psychological order. It doesn't look like very that orderly like other orders, but still there is an order even in psychology, that given a certain background, people behave in a certain way. There is an order like that. Now all these orders are there. The orders themselves we consider as dharma. But then more than all these orders, there is one more order, which is what we call moral order or ethical order, which is what we are pursuing also. Based on that ethical order or moral order only, we are pursuing our actions, we are seeking pleasure, we are seeking security. Artha kama, we have to seek in terms of these values. Now, this moral order itself is specifically known as dharma. Although dharma can mean all these orders together also, but generally when we say dharma, we are talking about the moral order. And moral order again can be commonsensical, because we all commonly sense certain orders. Okay. But there are also orders which are given by different traditions. So our dharmic tradition gives some Vishesha Dharma, special certain things to be done. So that also is added. But we also have one more important understanding with reference to the moral order. What is that? Which is very unique to our tradition, which is what we have to appreciate. Which is that for every action, we have two results. Not just the drishta phalam or the immediately experienced result. Depending on whether what you did is right or wrong, you are also accumulating papa and punya. So if you do something right, you accumulate a adrishta phalam or unseen result, which also accumulates to your account, called punya. If you do something right, you accumulate punya. If you do something wrong, you accumulate papa. Then we believe that this papa punya is also a factor. Whenever we do any action and we get the results of action, not only your effort is involved in that, but the results are determined by also what papa and punya is fructifying at that moment in your life. Now this is only a belief, but it is a very believable belief, because it goes with all our experience. So this we have already discussed. So we also have this understanding of papa punya, and in the context of human pursuits, when we use the term dharma, dharma means both the moral order and the result of doing action in keeping with that moral order. Correct? So because human beings, when they pursue or when they seek dharma, they are really seeking punya and trying to avoid papa. So in this context, actually dharma means punya, because we all want pleasant life here, but hereafter also we want pleasant life, because the by implication, once we say that for every action you are also accumulating papa and punya, this papa and punya has to either fructify in this life or it will carry forward. In fact, that is again a very strong belief for us. What is that? The only thing you carry with you even after death is your papa punya. Understand that. All other things you have to leave here. You cannot take. Somebody else will enjoy after you are gone. But your papa and punya you have to carry. And our belief is that you will also take another body, and what body you take again also will depend on the papa punya which you have accumulated. So like this we have a certain understanding, and based on this we seek punya. That is what, in the context of human pursuits, the seeking of punya by doing one's dharma itself is called dharma again. That punya is called dharma. Now these three pursuits we have discussed in certain detail. Now what does it imply? All this constant pursuit, because this human pursuit is never ending. I told you, it is incessant, it is constant. So it is driven by something. What drives this constant struggle, constant pursuit of things means it is this judgment, the self judgment that I am incomplete, I am inadequate. This is there for all of us. So only when you look at yourself as an incomplete and inadequate person, we want to do something to change that situation, correct? Because if you see all our pursuits, you have to put in effort. Nothing comes easily. Sometimes certain things may come easily. That also we say is because of some punya. But even there, some effort you have to put. Even if somebody gives you food, you have to open your mouth and at least swallow it or chew it. So the food can come up to your mouth. Only you have to eat it. That effort at least you have to put. So we are all seeking to change the situation around us. But that change which we are seeking is for whose purpose? For what purpose, in fact? For whom are we changing, or are we trying to change a particular situation? It is not for change for the sake of change, correct? It is for yourself. Because in a changed situation, I also want to see myself changed in a different manner. I want to see myself as complete. I feel that, okay, given this situation, I will not look at myself as inadequate. I will feel adequate. That is the sense of well-being we are all seeking. That is why you are constantly doing something. But the constantly seeking itself is pointing to something. What is that? However much you change a particular situation, even though initially you may feel adequate, complete. In fact, that feeling of well-being is there. Otherwise, we won't even be seeking all the time. But it does not last, because situations are not entirely under your control. Situations will change. But even if the situation does not change, you change. As a person, you change. That is the tragedy. Correct? So let us take a simple example. So everybody, normal people, they want to get a good job. You want to earn money. You want to buy your own house. Correct? But the thing here is, every change which we do involves gain and also loss. All changes have this. Sometimes the loss is more than gain also. Okay, that is tragic. But even where you say that you have gained something, you have to lose something, because you have to put in some effort. Your time and effort are gone, or your money also you have to expend. So you are buying a house because you want to have a sense of well-being, living in your own house, feeling secure about having a roof over your head. But you have to spend money for that. Many times, in fact, nowadays, we don't have the entire money. We take loan. So you buy the house on loan. Initially, the bank doesn't even take EMI. They say that we'll take after you take possession of your house. Then first month you are enjoying, aha, new house, everything is nice. Then what happens? The first time you pay EMI only, some pain starts from there. Money is deducted from your salary every month. Then after a few years or even a few months, first rain, something is leaking. So you have to maintain. Whatever you gain, yoga is actually easy. Understand that. In Sanskritam, when you gain something which you do not have, that is called yoga. Then, but gaining alone is not enough, correct? You have to maintain things as they are, maintain them in good working condition, maintain them so that they do not get lost from you. That is called kshema. So yoga and kshema, both are important. And kshema means continuous effort. Gain yoga, at least initially you put one effort to gain something. Then kshema is a bigger problem. You have to all the time maintain something. Even if you buy a two-wheeler, you have to maintain it. Two-wheeler makes things easier in some ways. And after some time, but you have to put petrol. You have to regular service you have to do. You have to be careful you don't get into some accident and all that. So everywhere, all this, any change involves some loss. Means for some time I feel as though I have overcome my inadequacies. That is what we can say. Everything falls into place. Correct? We can say that. When you do something, when you accomplish something, when you gain something, for some time at least, it feels like everything has fallen into place. What is the meaning of that? That means I don't want anything to be different from what it is right now. If I don't want anything to be different in a given situation, I feel good about myself. I enjoy that feeling of well-being. That is what is driving me, in fact. But the tragedy is that it does not last. Situations change, you yourself also change. Okay. Now, this is also true in terms of seeking pleasure, not only security, because house is a security, let us say. But what about pleasure? Pleasure is even more fickle because pleasure depends on many things. One is the object itself, correct? Object of enjoyment we are seeking. That has to be there. But that alone is not good enough. Your senses also have to be functioning properly. Even if your senses are functioning properly, you have to have a certain state of mind to enjoy. All these three things are important for pleasure. Let us say you like a nice ice cream, but if you are having some cold, means you cannot enjoy it. With cold, even your tongue doesn't taste the same. Your sense of taste is not there. Or you have an ice cream, your senses are also fine, you are healthy, but before you take that ice cream, you get a news that your best friend has gotten into some accident and is in ICU or something. Then it doesn't feel the same, correct? You cannot have that. So your state of mind also is important. Now all these three things have to be there, and then you have a sense of well-being. But the problem is, even that ice cream, how many ice creams you can eat? It's not going to last, correct? That is the problem. So seeking pleasure also gives a certain well-being. Seeking security gives you a certain well-being, but it is all very, very ephemeral. It's anitya. That's what we say in Sanskrit. It's not going to make you adequate, complete. for a certain period of time, it gives you a certain feeling that you don't want to change anything around you. But otherwise, this compulsive seeking of change, it returns, and that I am inadequate, I am incomplete. This problem continues because this problem is centered on you. Understand that. So, of course, day-to-day living itself involves a lot of change, correct? You have to get up, you have to cook, you have to take a bath. All these things are not a change in itself, is not a problem. That also I want you to understand. Living one's life means we do encounter different situations. Change is natural. But the compulsive change which you are seeking is centered on you. It is not change which is just happening, or change for the sake of change, because anyway the situations keep changing on a day-to-day basis. You go along with that change, or you can even do some changes, which is not a big problem. But the problem is that any change which you are seeking to create, you are trying to do that because you think that you will change, correct? In that, so let us say even a simple thing, weather is very nice, you have made some food, now you want to go out into the garden and eat, correct? You can enjoy. Instead of eating in some room, you want to sit in the open and just enjoy the pleasant weather, the nature around. That's not a problem in itself. But if you are depressed and you want to create this change, so that you want to change yourself in some manner, then it is something different, correct? The same thing is different. So that's what I am trying to tell you. The problem is centered on you. But the solution which everybody is trying to create or seek is what? You try to change the situation around you. In turn, you think that in that changed situation, somehow you will also change and you will become acceptable to yourself. In your own vision, you will become adequate, complete. But that's not happening. That is something all of you can relate to. This never happens. That's why this compulsive seeking of change continues. That's what we call samsara. In Sanskritam, this is called samsara. Samyak sarati means you go from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another. We can even say it is a life of becoming. Because as you are not acceptable to yourself. So what? You seek change. You want to become somebody, or you want to become something in a particular given situation. Then even after becoming that, it doesn't stop, correct? You want to become something else. Keeps on going. That is what we call samsara. This is the fundamental problem of a human being. So now, here, we have to understand some more things. What is that? Now, is there any solution for my fundamental problem? Because I can now understand very clearly that what I'm really seeking is freedom from insecurity, freedom from being subjected to sorrow, displeasure, freedom from being limited with reference to time. That means I am a mortal. In my own vision, I am limited by space, I am limited by time. I want freedom from that. Fundamentally, what I require is freedom from all these bondages. These are all different bondages, correct? Every limitation is a bondage. And I seek freedom, complete freedom from all these bondages, all these limitations. That is what I really seek. Even while I am seeking security or pleasure or dharma in terms of papa punya, what I am really seeking is freedom from this bondage. Right? I already gave you an example. If your leg is hurt and you are limping, you are not able to walk properly, what do we get? We get a crutch. Now, why do you even hold on to the crutch? Because you are insecure on your own legs. Now, what you really seek then? You seek security so that you can be secure on your own legs. Crutch is only something which is incidental, or therefore temporarily it is there. You don't really want better, more and more, better and better crutch or anything. Correct? Today you have a wooden crutch, tomorrow you have a titanium crutch and all that. That doesn't make any sense. I don't really want better crutches. What I really want is freedom to walk with my own legs. Freedom from insecurity which is centered on my own legs. I want freedom from that. I become secure. So that is what all of us are really seeking. We are all seeking freedom from different limitations. In fact, what you perceive as your own limitations will vary. So the seeking of artha and kama, correct, security and pleasures, again are guided a lot by personal values. What you are seeking, even your own spouse may not agree with that. They may have a different idea of what is security, what is pleasure. You have a different idea. So there are personal values there. Of course, all this seeking has to also be in keeping with our common sense, ethical values, religious values. It has to be in keeping with dharma. All those things are also there. But the very fact that I am seeking something itself is pointing to my fundamental problem. So ideally speaking, if I see myself as always adequate, complete, irrespective of a given situation, then only I am totally content. Then I don't really want to change anything. In fact, change may still happen. That's a different thing. In fact, the nature of the world itself is change. Change is something we have to encounter on a day-to-day basis. That itself is not a problem. In spite of all the changes around me, I am content, I am adequate, I am complete in my own vision. I don't want to change myself. No, that is what I want to achieve really. That is the freedom I am seeking. Even while I am seeking security and pleasure and so many other things, okay, whatever it is in your life you are seeking, different experiences. Is it there or not? Something like that, can I achieve? Can I feel totally content with myself that I do not want anything else in life? Totally self-satisfied. Now, our tradition says, yes, you can gain that contentment. Okay. In fact, there are examples of different saints, different people who have attained that, correct? That is there. We all hear stories. Even I got inspired by reading the biography of Ramana. So Ramana Maharishi, I don't know, many of you may know him, some of you may not know who he is. So he was born in Madurai in 19th century. Then when he was, I think 13 years old or something, he had a certain experience of death. Means he imagined his physical body is dead, everybody is carrying that body and burning it and all that, but still he is alive as a conscious being. The body may die, but I am there. That means I am not just this body. So from that, he was able to actually interpret it and gain a certain insight. Then he lost all interest for regular pursuits in life. He went to a place called Tiruvannamalai. There again he was with other yogis, other Siddha Purushas, because that place is a very famous place for all sadhus, they are there. Then he did lot more tapas there, and then he attained a certain understanding about himself. Then thereon what, he never really even left that place. He hardly moved around. Maybe he lived within a radius of 10 kilometers or something. This is whole life. He never went anywhere. He had no possessions. He threw away whatever little possessions he had. Even the last bit of money, he threw it into the temple tank. So he never really possessed anything. He was just living in a cave on the hill. Some people used to give him some food. He will eat it. And he was living like that for many years. He was unknown also. People didn't even know such a person is there. Then somebody went and talked to him, and then they published a book based on that, and then he became famous. But he was still there only, in the same place. Then all the so-called successful people in society, correct? We think that those who have money, those who have power, all this, those who are famous, they are all successful. But even such successful people are all having problems. They are all again in sorrow only. Aham shochami, like Narada said in Chandogya Upanishad. He knows so many things, all the different Vidyas Narada Maharishi knew. But still he goes to Sanat Kumara and says, Aham shochami. Bhagavan, you have to only teach me. I have heard that Atmavid Tarati Shokam. The one who knows himself crosses over all sorrow. Like that, people went, once Ramana became known, all these people went to him. He is sitting in one place, happy. He doesn't want anything. He is happy being himself. But those whom we think are all successful people, they all went to Ramana and said, please, you teach us. We require peace of mind, whatever it is. So when I read this biography, I could relate to that very much. What is that? So if you think about your own life, whatever you may achieve, you are not going to be totally contented with yourself. That everybody can see that, understand that. You can become famous, you can become powerful, you can become moneyed. Whatever may be your ambition in life, even after achieving that, you are not going to be totally contented with yourself. This you don't have to really achieve to even know that. Your thought experiment is good enough. But if you achieve something and then you have come to a conclusion that even whatever you have achieved is limited, correct? You have accomplished many things in life and still know the limitations of your own accomplishments, very good. Then you are actually qualified for Vedanta. To study Vedanta, who is qualified? You should have achieved something. You should have accomplished something and seen the limitations of your own accomplishment. Then you are actually qualified for Vedanta. Now here, Ramana did not possess anything. He was not even making big effort to have his daily food. Whatever people gave as alms to him or brought and gave to him, he was eating. He did not pursue any pleasure or anything externally. He did not possess anything, but still he was looked upon as somebody who has achieved. So when I read the biography, what did I want? I thought I should be like Ramana. That is what I want. Whatever he has gained, I want that, not other things. So if you have a clarity like that, then you have what we call as Purushartha Nischayam. This is what in Sanskritam we call Purushartha Nischayam, means what you have understood that even while seeking Artha and Kama, in reality I am seeking only freedom from insecurity, freedom from sorrow, freedom from all limitations. Means really what you are seeking is freedom. You want freedom centered on yourself. Because the problem of limitation is centered on yourself. The solution also has to be centered on yourself. The problem is I, means solution also has to be on I. It cannot be on external things. Understand that. Now, if the problem is centered on myself, is there a solution or not? I talked about Ramana and all that, but even then you may not be convinced. Correct? I have given an example of somebody who has led a certain kind of life and still who was considered to be somebody who is greatly accomplished, who is a jnani, wise person. But even if you are not convinced about that, how will I know whether whatever he said is true or not? Means there are only two possibilities. Understand that. Either your vision about yourself is true, that I am a limited, inadequate, incomplete, wanting person is true. If that is true, then why are you struggling all the time? You are impulsively struggling, compulsively struggling, constantly struggling to change, to become something else. So if your vision about yourself is the truth, if that is your real nature, then why all this struggle? You should be able to accept your nature. Whatever is your natural state must be the most natural, correct? You don't have to struggle to get out of it. So this struggle itself is pointing out to something. Then the only other option is maybe I do not know myself correctly. I do not know my nature properly. Maybe I am not really this struggling, limited individual. There is something else I need to know about myself. So if you can see that possibility, then Vedanta is there for you, because Vedanta comes and says, yes, there is a fundamental error with reference to yourself, correct? Anybody can make a mistake. Error is possible. You are walking down the road. It is twilight time. It is dark, but it is not completely dark. So you see a stump on the roadside and you can mistake it for a person, man with some kind of a weapon and all that, correct? You become afraid. So that is what we call adhyasa. Seeing one thing where some other thing is there in reality. Atasmin tad buddhi. So this is possible where incomplete knowledge is there, because you should have good enough sight to see the stump, but not very good sight. like an owl at night to know exactly that it is a stump and it is not a human being who is trying to attack you. So let us say some couple of other people come. One person has exceptional sight. The other person has short-sightedness, very poor sight. For both of them, there is no problem. Why? Because the exceptional sight person sees the truth as it is. It is only a tree stump, no threat to me or anything. In fact, I'm neutral towards that. The short-sighted person does not have enough vision to see anything. He cannot even see the stump. Then how can he even mistake it for any human being or anything? He also has no problem. Who is having a problem? The one who has enough sight to see that there is something, correct, but does not have clarity that it is really a tree stump. Then you can project, correct. If you are seeing something but not clear about what it is, means there is an avarana, we say. The truth is covered. Once the truth is covered, projection happens. It's inevitable. You project whatever is your own fear onto that. You are afraid of thieves, means you project a thief there. Then you are afraid, you want to run away. Or at least you can take your torch and shine it there to see what it is really. So like that, human beings have evolved self-consciousness. We are able to make a certain self-judgment. And in our judgment, we judge ourselves as incomplete, inadequate. Animals do not have such evolved self-consciousness. They don't have a problem. They don't see the problem at all. So ignorance is bliss in one way. Human beings sense the problem. They are struggling throughout the life. Wise people, Jnani also has no problem because Jnani does not see himself or herself as inadequate, incomplete. Jnani's vision about oneself is totally different. Because Jnani knows the truth that I am limitless. I, as a conscious being, is limitless. I don't lack anything. I am Purnaha. I am complete. I am adequate in all respects. I am not even subjected to space-time. In fact, space-time is there in me. I am the one who is conscious of space-time. Space-time becomes evident to me. I am not in space-time, but space-time is created in me. Like even in a dream world, correct? We create an entire new space-time. We can even relate to that. My existence is not in space-time. I exist as I am. As a conscious being, I always, existence also is part of my nature. I exist. I am conscious. Everything becomes evident to me. I am the invariable in every cognition. Therefore, I am limitless also. The entire space-time is in me. Space-time comes and goes. I am always there. That is me. That I is the source of everything, in fact, which does not lack anything. Now, that is the knowledge we are talking about. So, if you have a certain mistake with reference to yourself, if you have made a mistake with reference to yourself, and the whole problem is just a projection based on that initial mistake, then there is a solution, correct? If the problem is real, understand that there is no solution for the problem. If you are really incomplete, inadequate, insecure, nobody can do anything about it. You can keep on adding more and more security. That only points to the fact that you are more insecure. But if the problem itself is not real, the problem is one born of ignorance, then there is a solution. What is the solution? Knowledge is the solution, correct? If the problem is one of ignorance, knowledge is the solution. Not doing something, gaining punya, papa and all is not a solution. Gaining lot of security, going after pleasure, seeking different experiences is not a solution. Even after all the experience, you still remain the same individual, limited being. It doesn't solve anything. Understand that. If the problem is one of ignorance, knowledge alone is the solution. And another thing in that is what? Since ignorance alone is the problem, in reality there is no problem. Understand that. This is what we call accomplishing the accomplished. So normally in life, all your accomplishments are accomplishing the unaccomplished. That is proper when you are accomplishing something which is limited. Because by very definition, limited things are not there right now here. So you have to somehow either bring it here or you have to go there. Let us say to gain something limited, either you have to produce and bring it to your place, or you go to the place where it is there and then you enjoy it. So accomplishing the unaccomplished is what you have been used to in life all the time. But here we are talking about accomplishing the accomplished, because you are already the limitless. The problem is one of only ignorance, not knowing. No, I still need an example. Simplest example is what you all do this, correct? Or whoever has a specs, they can do this. Sometimes you do this and forget that the spec is there on top of your head. And you are searching all over. In fact, your vision also is not the same now. It's even more difficult to find out where it is. Because after some time, even the sensation of having this speck, you get so used to it, you don't know that it is there, correct? There is no special sensation that the extra weight of the speck is there on your head and all that. It is all you are used to it. You totally forget, you forgot about that. Now, what is your problem? You think that you are not the one with the specs. You are inadequate. My eyesight is not proper. Then you are searching for a solution all over, going there, here and there. You are not finding it. Why? You will never find it because the solution is not external. You are already the person with the specs. Only thing is you didn't know that. Okay. So what do? I have to know that I already have that specs. I am already the person with the specs. Or somebody can come and say, your wife can come and say, your husband can come and say, hey, they can see that easily, correct? That is the guru. The guru can come and say, hey, this is your problem. This is the solution. What is the solution? You are already what you are seeking. The seeker and the sought are the same. In fact, that is why it is the greatest secret. Why? Greatest secret, because the seeker is not separate from the sought. That means all seeking is vyartha. It is useless, in fact. You are never going to find. As long as you are seeking, you are never going to find. You have to know. Knowledge alone will solve. Understand that. So where the problem is ignorance, knowledge alone can be the solution. Once you have understood this, we say that you have made a certain transformation. What is that transformation? Initially, you understood that what I am seeking is freedom. in all my seekings, whether I am seeking insecurity, sorry, I am seeking freedom from insecurity, really, correct? When I am seeking security. When I am seeking pleasure, I am seeking freedom from sorrow. Like that, whatever I am seeking, basically you understand that underlying that is the feeling of some bondage, some limitation which you want to be free from. So if you have understood that what you are really seeking is freedom, means what you are really seeking is moksha. I am not seeking dharma, artha or kama. Even while seeking dharma, artha, kama, what I am really seeking is moksha. If you have understood that, then you are called a mumukshu. In Sanskritam we say mumukshu means what? The one who is desirous of freedom. Moktum ichuhu, mumukshuhu. One who is desirous of freedom, freedom from all limitations. So if you have understood the human pursuit and then really want to only seek freedom, in fact, you have understood freedom is the only real pursuit, in fact. All other pursuits are only born of ignorance. Freedom is the only real pursuit. Moksha alone is the parama purushartha, we say. It is the only pursuit, because even while pursuing other things, you are really seeking moksha only. That is the parama purushartha. But even there, what? If I want to gain freedom, I cannot produce it newly, because what I am seeking is not limited. Only limited thing can be created newly, or it can be cleaned up. Something is not good, you are cleaning it up, or you have to reach it somewhere, or you transform one thing into another. All these things are possible through action, different types of action, correct? But none of this is possible because what I am seeking is limitless. Freedom from all limitations is limitlessness, and that cannot be attained by any amount of action, any amount, because all results of actions are finite. Any amount of adding up finite things will not create infinite. Infinite has to be there already, correct? If you are already the limitless, it is not something in space, in time, or in terms of any one particular object. It cannot be there like that. It has to transcend all these things. It has to be already there. It has to be available here and now. If it is already there, why am I not knowing it? Then you have to know it, correct? So the problem now becomes a problem of getting rid of ignorance. From seeking limitlessness, it is now becoming knowing yourself as the limitless, because limitless has to be already there here and now by definition. If it has to be there here and now, why am I not knowing it? Means you know it. You better know it. Then you seek knowledge of that limitless. You cannot become the limitless. You have to be already the limitless. That is the only possibility. Means you have to know that you are already the limitless. So now your pursuit from moksha becomes a pursuit of jnanam. So you become one who is a jijnasu. From a mumukshu, you have to become a jijnasu. Then who will give me this knowledge? Means then Vedanta comes into the picture. So we'll see that next week. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद जी.